I'm Tony, and today we're going to make a rupee block. This is an easy foundation paper pieced block. Remember, if you haven't done foundation paper piecing before or combined papers, different units together before, take a look at my tutorial videos that are down below and do those first. You do need to have some basic foundation paper piecing in order to make this. However, I'm still going to take you step by step and show you how we're going to make this block. Step number one of the rupee block is you want to print your stuff out. I suggest printing out page number 2. This is the page that has all of your cutting instructions so that as you're cutting, you can just literally go down the list and check them off. This is also where if you change your colors, you can just write it in there and not have any issues. So I like to have that. And then as I do my organization, which I will show you later, I can mark that. You also have to print out the last page. This is page 9 of 9. Now you do have to print this out because this is foundation paper piecing. And you can print this out on a couple of different choices. You can use regular printer paper, or for this, I'm using the special foundation paper piecing paper. If you're interested in that, it is linked down below. You can pick it up. It's a lot lighter, it's easier, and when perforated, it removes a lot nicer from the blocks. So that's why I like to use it. So make sure you've got those. Then let's make sure our sizing is correct. So after you print this out, I'm going to get my ruler. And we're going to check to make sure that this 1-inch block is in fact 1 inch squared all the way around. If your block right here is not 1 inch and you want a 6-inch finished block, check your printer settings. I have some instructions in the pattern that walks you through how to make sure your printer settings are correct. There we go. Now, if you want to resize it, you can resize it up to whatever you want to do. So let's say if you want to make this half size, then you want to reduce it to 50%. If you want to make this double the size, increase it to 200%. Now remember, if you're increasing it over 100%, it's not going to completely fit on one page. Just have it print on multiple pages and use Scotch tape in order to tape the sections together to create a block. Scotch tape is easily removed once it's perforated, so it's an easy way to combine your papers together. All right, so let's do our first step. After we've printed everything out, it is to cut our fabrics. Now for the rupee, fabric selection is important. There's some of my blocks where it's like, yeah, you can pick whatever colors you want. But with the rupee, you have a couple of different things. So you have a couple of the different layouts. You need 4 different colored reds. So your first red is right here. Your second red is right there. Your third red is right there. And your fourth red is, third red is here, here, here. Oh, look, wait, that's what I did. I'm like, that doesn't seem right. That's now the correct way. This is your first red. There you go. Red 1, red 2, red 3, and red 4. So it goes in the colors. So your first red is your lightest. So these are the colors I've picked for this one. So this is my first red, my first blue, my second blue, my third blue, and then my fourth blue. And then this is the color I'm going to be using for my background. So try to get a nice complement of colors. As we saw with the D20, let me actually grab that and I can show you. With the D20 block, we had some issues with the coloring of it. With my original one, with the purple one. And I just did not like that at all. Well, here's the blues. Here's the blues of what I'm using now for these. And of course I can't find it. I had it. Oh, wait, nope, that's not it. There it is. So you see with these purples. So the colors, you have to take a look at those colors. So the purples here, don't really look great together. So these purples probably would not have been good for this rupee as well. You want 4 colors that are close enough together that they blend, but at the same time, you want them distinct enough so that they can show off what they are. So this is actually the exact thing I'm doing for the rupee today, except a different background color. So let's get cutting our fabrics. I'm going to go ahead and start cutting my fabrics, speed up the video, and then I'll come back after everything's been cut and I will show you how I have organized all of my fabrics. I changed my mind. I'm not fast forwarding this yet. We gotta wait because I forgot a step. I forgot to cut out our paper. I forgot to cut out the pieces. For the past couple of weeks, I've been filming blocks that are just all together, and I don't have to cut them out if I don't feel like it, but we do. So let's cut these out. Make sure when you're cutting these papers out, you are using paper scissors, not fabric scissors. So make sure you're using paper scissors. And I also mentioned when I came back that I was going to show you the organization, but no, I'm going to show you right now. So first off, when you're cutting, see how I'm cutting around those dotted lines. Do not cut on the dotted lines, just cut around. That is important. These dotted lines are our finishing cut lines. Now, they don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be super straight. It doesn't have to be super nice. It just has to be somewhere outside of those dotted lines. Then what I'm going to do after I have everything all cut out is I'm going to lay my pieces from A to F. Sorry, I had to think about how many units I had. So I'm going to lay my paper units out from A to F lined up right here. Then, as I am cutting my fabrics, wherever it belongs. So let's say if I'm cutting A1. Well, then it's going to go and be laid with the A1 block. If I'm cutting B3, at that point I'm going to find the B unit and place that piece of fabric with B3. And then that way it's going to be easier as I assemble my units. So we're going to be laying it out just like this. So as I'm cutting the fabrics, you'll see me take the fabrics and move them off the screen. And then that is just because I'm putting them with the units. So now, let's go ahead and cut our fabric. I'm going to speed the video up and we'll come back and then I'll show you how to assemble everything. All right, let's start assembling our units. Now remember, when you're looking at this page, as you see, I've drawn all over mine with a whole bunch of different notes and things. This is reversed from what our picture's going to be. It is going to be flipped because whenever we're taking a look at our units, this unit right here, as you see, A1, A2, A3, is the opposite of what we have on your color layout. And that's because we actually take it wrong side to wrong side, just like that. So when it's flipped, we get the actual colors. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you step by step how we're going to put this together. So let's assemble this. For our A piece right here, we want to take the wrong side to wrong side. Now this, if we take a look at this piece of fabric, this is the right side, this is the wrong side. So we want to take this this right here, and we're going to put this wrong side to wrong side, just like that. So we're going to add a little bit of water-soluble glue. It's a lot easier to place the fabric and have it stay in place as you're working on it. For that water-soluble glue. I only do it for the first step now, though. I did try it for all the steps, and it got a little crazy. So I only do it for the first step. Whenever you're placing it, make sure you place it all the way, covering all of your dotted line, and going past this line between A1 and A2. Then, you want to take your straight edge, and kind of fold along the side between A1 and A2. lay your straight edge down. Oh, I couldn't find my rotary cutter there for a second. And then trim the fabric. So that is now your perfect 1/4 inch seam. So let's open this up and we're going to add our A2 fabric. Now my A2 fabric that I chose is a batik. It is a dyed fabric, and because of the dyeing process, there is no right and wrong side. So if you have fabric that looks like this, that's no right and wrong side, have no fear. You don't have to worry. Pick the side that you like the best and place that down. So we're going to go right side to right side. So for example, if we were using this one, that's the right, that's the wrong. This is the right side. We'd place that down like that. But because this is a batik, I just am going to put it down any which way I like. And I'm going to pin it in place. And that's it. That's it for putting these units together. So I'm going to take this piece and set that aside. And I'm going to set this aside for sewing. So let's take a look at B. B is the opposite because we have to make sure that our seams are lining up. Our seams go opposite to try to get everything to line up nicely. Now you notice I had to handwrite on mine because I've realized this problem as I was making the tutorial. Your pattern that you are working with, the top says B1, the bottom says B3. I have fixed it. So we're going to start with the B1. So let's go ahead and add some glue here to the top. And remember, wrong side to wrong side. So let's make sure this whole thing is covered. I'm going to press this down a bit. And there we are. Now, this is my B3 piece, so I'm going to take this and set that aside. All right, so let's perforate this, fold this over. We're going to trim this 1/4 inch from the edge, open it back up again, and then I'm going to place my B2 piece right along that edge. And if I flip this up, you see how it perfectly covers it. So it is perfectly centered and it is fine. All right, so let's go ahead and pin this. And that's it. That's how you do the 1 and the 2 pieces for each of the units. So I'm going to go through right now and I'm going to do C, D, E, and F. I'm going to add 1. I'm going to start with the 1, cut it, or fold it, cut it, add piece number 2, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how to sew them. Whenever you're ready to sew it, make sure you lower your stitch length to 1.6. I do say that in the instructions. This is important because when you lower your stitch length to 1.6, it will make sure that that paper is perforated enough so that you can remove it. All right, so let's do this. Now, what I've done is I've sewn between that 1 and that 2. This is the F block. So I've started it a little bit before, and then I've gone all the way after. So we have to go at least 1/4 inch before and after. So let me show you this in slow motion now. So I'm starting it off of the paper in this case, and then I'm just slowly sewing that down, just sewing right along that line, and then all the way off the paper. The fabric is large enough that you should have plenty of room to sew that on and off the paper. Now, if you don't want to continue to cut these in between the pieces, like I've been doing, here's a trick. I'm going to show you a simple way to do some chain piecing. So we're doing this along. As soon as I'm off that paper, I am going to turn this, go off the fabric, and then start up the next one. You don't have to start all the way over here for your fabric. You can start close to your thing and then over. And then off, and 2 more. There we are. And I have one more that I'm going to sew. And then, oh, that one I just went off all the way. It doesn't matter. Oh, let's go this way. And then I'm going to take it over to the ironing mat. And I'll show you how we iron these. All right, when we're ironing it, I have two that are laid out. It's almost the exact same format of the block, but of course we're doing them in opposite ways. We always want to iron towards the second piece that we added. So in the case of the B unit, we're ironing it from B1 to B2. In the case of the E unit, we're ironing it from E1 to E2. Just like that. And as you see, we've got those there. So let me go ahead and quickly iron the rest of these. So I always like to give it a little iron before actually ironing it towards the second piece. Because what that does is it locks those seams in place. And it gives it a crisper, nicer seam. Now you notice, you can probably hear it, I have my steam on. It is perfectly fine to use steam with foundation paper piecing. It may curl your paper a bit, so you notice how this one's starting to curl with that little bit I did before. That's fine. It's not going to damage the paper. Oh, look, and it's spitting a little bit. It's also fine. It's not going to damage the paper. So if you can handle a little bit of wet paper, or if you can handle a little bit of curling, use steam and you get a much, much nicer, better crisp on the fabric. All right, so let's add the third ones. Where is my A? My A and my B. My B, there we go. All right, so let me show you. Let's add the third pieces on. It's really simple. All you do is almost the same thing you did in the first one. We are laying our straight edge down. We're folding it along A3, laying it down, trimming it 1/4 inch from the edge, and then taking our A3 piece and laying it down on that edge. Now, this one's jutting out a bit, so we want to make sure that we go to the right enough that it's going to cover it. So make sure if you fold this away using a 1/4 inch seam that it completely covers your paper. So in the instructions, you're folding away from 2 towards 3 so that it completely covers that paper. And that's how you know your positioning is correct. So let's get this pinned. And that's it. And that's all you're doing. So you're adding your third piece to all of your units. And then you're going to bring it to the sewing machine. And then you're going to sew it exact same way you did the first one. And then we're going to iron it. And then once we iron it, I'm going to speed up this video. I'm going to come back from the video after I've got them all ironed. And then I'm going to show you how we trim our units and then how we assemble them. We have our units sewn. It's starting to look like a rupee, right? All right, let's trim these. So this is how you trim your unit. This is the rotary cutter that I've been using for fabric. I'm putting this away because I'm no longer using it because I'm using a second rotary cutter to do this. Please make sure, if possible, you have 2 rotary cutters, one for paper, one for fabric. When you use a rotary cutter on paper, it dulls the blade. So if you have 2 separate ones, you don't have to worry about that. This is my paper rotary cutter. So we have 2 ways of doing this. You can cut right along these dotted lines, or you can measure a 1/4 inch from the solid line. Hopefully it's the same thing. So let's go ahead and trim this up. You're just going around the entire thing, following along those dotted lines, which are 1/4 inch from the solid lines. Now, once I've got it finished, this is my unit. So I'm going to take a look. This is my unit F. So I'm going to set this right here. Let me make sure I've got that on the camera right there. So there's my unit F. All right, so here's E. So I'm going to speed up the video. I'm just trimming all these units, and then I'm going to lay them out and then move them over so we can see them on the camera. All right, let's sew our units together. Now, I honestly don't remember which order I told you to do this in the instructions, so I'm just going to do it. I'm going to take this one, and we're going to do it to this one. So, now, with this one, we are going to have some offset triangles. What you want to do is you want to line up your seams and line those up. And then what we're going to do is then fold it back 1/4 inch. So when I fold it back, so you see on my seam right here, that is my seam line. I'm just going to take this whole thing and fold on that seam line and then line it up. And that right there is lined up. So once that is lined up, oops, a little bit more, on that seam line, I'm going to open this back up and then pin it. Let's make sure this is lined up correct. Nope, a little bit more. There we are. You see how that's lined up right there? So that when I open this up, the biggest trick that first time, it wasn't lined up right here. And then let's put a pin in that seam there and a pin in that seam there. And that's the trick to ones like this, is you want to fold it along the seam line to judge what it's going to be before putting it together. Just like we did for the first one. We're going to take this. Let's go ahead and fold this along the seam line. Okay, and just like that. So let's line this up and then fold. Oops, I need to go a little bit closer in. There we are. And you see how that lines up. Now, this may not be exact over here. It may not be exact as you're lining those up, and that's perfectly okay. Because we're going to trim this when we're done. The most important thing is that your lines line up. Your lines line up. The most important thing is that all of your seams match together. There we are. That's what I meant to say. All right, let's go sew this. When you're sewing the combined units, you want to sew along this line right there. So make sure the best way of doing it is, of course, chain piecing. Now, whenever we're doing this, whenever we're inserting our needle in between this little dip right there, we're making sure that it's lining up. So as you see there, I go right along that line. So just like we did with before, we're sewing directly on that line, because remember we folded it back to make sure it was good. And then when you're coming out this side, you should be coming out that little dip right there. And I'll show it to you after I sew this one. Same exact thing. Line it up at the dip and all the way down. And let me show you this first one so you can see what I mean about the dip. Now, if you're not sure about chain piecing, I do have a video down below talking about it. So you see how I started there? Oops, come on. Focus in on this. There we are. And then the bottom, see how it comes out right at the dip. And it's a nice straight line all the way down. Now, when we iron our seams for our combined units, we want to iron these seams open. Unlike with the others when we ironed it towards the twos. Well, we have all of this paper, right? It is really hard to get the paper out after you iron it. So what I always suggest now is take your paper out of your seams before you iron them. So all you're doing is just folding it and ripping it down. And if you get little bits of paper in your seam like that, just take your tweezers and pop it out. It's not a problem. These are my favorite tweezers that I like. They're the Famore 507s. I adore these tweezers because they're angled and they've got a sharp edge on them. They are perfect for foundation paper piecing. Now, as soon as you get all of the paper out, then, all right, once you have your paper out, I find the best way to iron these open is to first iron it to one side and then turn it over, open your seam up, and then iron. Just like that. Now, if you're having problems getting your seams to lay perfectly flat, you can use one of these and just put that on there. This is a tailor's block. What it does is it traps the heat within this wood and it actually presses down those seams so they're perfectly flat. You just leave that on there for a minute, and when you take it off, your seams are perfect. So I'm going to take this and actually move it over here and keep that on there while I do my next one. So I'm going to go ahead and take all of the paper out of these. I'm going to iron them and then come back and show you how to start assembling the units together. Now, when you're sewing the last two halves together, you don't have to worry about checking your seam allowances. You just have to fold it over and make sure everything lines up. And then when you open it up, you see it'll be there. So as long as all lines up, you will be fine. Now, whenever you go to sew it, you may say, Tony, we've taken off this paper already. Well, yeah, but that's fine because you can just sew right along the edge of that torn paper. It's not a problem. You still have your sew line. So you don't have to worry about it not lining up because it's still going to line up. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to sew along here, we're going to iron it, and then we'll come back for the big reveal. And that's our rupee. So at this point, take out all of the extra paper, get all of the extra paper out, and then square it up. I personally like to use, as you've seen, I've used this the whole time, my Stripology Mini, because it's got the square up in there. So you can put that in there and square that up to 6.5 inches. Now remember, this is supposed to be at 6.5 inches because it includes your seam allowances. It will be a 6-inch finished block, but make sure you square it up to 6.5 inches. And that's how you make a rupee block. I really do love these colors. They're so cool. Hopefully you learned how to make a rupee block because that's what the video is about today. Don't forget to like this video, follow my YouTube, as well as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, although I haven't been doing it a lot lately, but I'll try. My Quite Nerdy Quilters Facebook group, Pinterest, Pinterest. And don't forget Twitch, where I stream live, and I also stream live here on YouTube. Check out my social media for the times if you want to join me live.